I woke up from emergency surgery to find a text message that would change everything. House sold, moving on, don't contact me. It was from my husband of 12 years, sent while I was unconscious on an operating table fighting for my life. What he didn't know was that I'd been preparing for his betrayal for months, and his biggest mistake was assuming I wouldn't survive to fight back. Before we dive into this absolutely insane story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell if you want to see more revenge stories like this one. Also, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. I love connecting with our global community. Trust me, you're going to want to stick around for this one. My name is Sarah Michelle Crawford. I'm 38 years old, and I'm a pediatric intensive care nurse at Children's Hospital of Colorado in Denver. 3 months ago, on October 23rd, I was rushed into emergency surgery for what started as stomach pain, but turned into a life-threatening case of sepsis from a ruptured appendix. During those 2 weeks while I was unconscious and fighting for my life, my husband, Marcus Emmanuel Rodriguez, systematically destroyed our life together. He sold our $485,000 house for $150,000 below market value, moved his 24-year-old Mistress Tiffany into our bedroom, threw away 12 years of my personal belongings, tried to claim my $200,000 life insurance policy by telling the company I had died, and began liquidating every asset we'd built together. Marcus thought he'd hit the jackpot, a dead wife, no messy divorce, and complete control over everything I'd worked for. He was planning to take his girlfriend and flee to Costa Rica with my money. He thought I was going to die. He was spectacularly wrong. I first met Marcus Rodriguez in September 2011 at the annual Children's Hospital Charity Gala. I was 27, he was 30, and he worked in commercial real estate. Picture this: 6'2", perfectly styled black hair, wearing a custom-tailored navy suit, and he had this magnetic confidence that made everyone want to be around him. Marcus approached me during the silent auction where I was bidding on a weekend getaway to Vail that I couldn't afford on my nurse's salary. He swooped in, outbid everyone else by $500, then handed me the winning certificate with a devastating smile. A beautiful woman shouldn't have to choose between helping sick children and treating herself, he said, and I was completely charmed. Our first date was dinner at Mizuna, one of Denver's most exclusive restaurants. Marcus ordered wine that cost more than my car payment and talked passionately about his work representing high-end commercial properties, describing multi-million-dollar deals he was closing and his plans to become one of Colorado's premier real estate developers. What impressed me most was how he asked thoughtful questions about my work with critically ill children. He seemed genuinely fascinated by the life-or-death decisions I made daily and the emotional strength required to comfort grieving families. "Sarah, I've been looking for a woman with substance," he told me over an incredibly expensive chocolate dessert. "Someone who makes a real difference in the world. I think I just found her." For the next 8 months, Marcus courted me like something out of a romance novel. Weekend trips to Aspen and 500 a night suites, dinners at restaurants I'd only read about, shopping trips where he'd insist on buying me designer clothes, because a woman of your caliber deserves to dress the part. I remember our third date specifically because it showed me exactly who Marcus was, or at least who I thought he was. We were at this tiny, family-owned Italian restaurant in Little Italy. Nothing fancy, just amazing homemade pasta and wine served in mason jars. The elderly owner, Giuseppe, was telling us about how his grandson had been in a car accident and was in the children's ICU where I worked. When I mentioned I might know his grandson, Giuseppe's whole face lit up. "You're one of the angels who saved my Tony's life," he said, tears in his eyes. He refused to let us pay for dinner and kept bringing us free desserts and wine. As we walked to Marcus's BMW afterward, he stopped and looked at me with this expression I'd never seen before. "Sarah, do you realize what just happened in there? That man would have given us everything he owned because of what you do for a living. You don't just have a job. You have a calling that changes people's lives forever." Then he pulled me into his arms right there on the sidewalk and said, "I make money. That's it. I move papers around and take percentages. But you're the reason parents don't lose their children. You're extraordinary, and I want to spend my life making sure you never forget that." When I protested about the expense of our dates, Marcus would laugh and pull me close. "Baby, money is just a tool for creating happiness. I make plenty of it, and I want to spend it on the woman I love. You save children's lives. You deserve everything beautiful in this world." Looking back now, I can see how perfectly calculated those words were. Marcus had figured out exactly what I needed to hear, that my work mattered, that I was valued, that I deserved to be spoiled after spending my days caring for everyone else. He made me feel like a queen, like I was the most important person in his universe. The proposal was equally perfect. We'd been dating for exactly 8 months when Marcus surprised me with that Napa Valley trip. I thought we were just going wine tasting, but Marcus had planned every detail down to the minute. The French laundry reservation that's impossible to get, the photographer hiding nearby, even the specific table by the window overlooking the vineyard. When the server brought out that chocolate souffle with the ring box nestled inside, I literally gasped so loudly that the entire restaurant turned to look. The ring was exactly what I would have chosen. Princess cut, simple setting, absolutely perfect size. Later I found out it cost $18,000, more than I made in 4 months. "How did you know exactly what I wanted?" I asked him through happy tears. "Because I pay attention to everything about you," Marcus replied, sliding the ring onto my finger. "I notice how you always stop to look at princess-cut diamonds in jewelry store windows. I notice how you prefer simple, classic styles over trendy designs. I notice everything because you're going to be my wife, and making you happy is going to be my life's work." Marcus proposed on Valentine's Day 2012 during a surprise weekend trip to Napa Valley. We were having dinner at the French Laundry when dessert arrived with a 2-carat princess-cut diamond ring nestled in the chocolate souffle. The entire restaurant applauded when I said yes. "I want to give you the fairy tale life you deserve," he whispered as he slipped the ring on my finger. "Marry me, and I'll spend every day proving you made the right choice." The wedding planning process should have been my first real warning sign, but I was so caught up in the fairy tale that I ignored every red flag. Marcus insisted on handling all the vendor payments himself, saying he wanted to take that stress off my shoulders. Whenever I asked to see contracts or receipts, he'd wave me off with explanations about business tax deductions and how everything was being handled through his company accounts. "Don't worry about the boring financial stuff," he'd say, kissing my forehead. "Your job is to be the most beautiful bride Colorado has ever seen. My job is to make sure money never becomes a source of stress for us." The wedding itself was absolutely magical. The Broadmoor had transformed their ballroom into something from a fairy tale, with thousands of white roses, crystal chandeliers, and linens that probably cost more than most people's entire weddings. Our first dance was to "At Last" by Etta James, played by a 12-piece orchestra that Marcus had flown in from Chicago. During his wedding speech, Marcus looked directly at me and said, "Sarah Crawford is the most extraordinary woman I've ever met. She spends her days fighting death itself to save children who can't fight for themselves. She has the biggest heart, the strongest hands, and the most beautiful soul of anyone in this room. Sarah, I promise you that every day of our marriage, I will work to deserve the love you're giving me today." There wasn't a dry eye in the house, including mine. I felt like the luckiest woman alive. Our European honeymoon was 3 weeks of pure luxury that I could never have imagined affording. Marcus had planned every detail: private tours of the Louvre, gondola rides in Venice, dinner at restaurants where reservations were booked months in advance. In Rome, He surprised me with a private shopping appointment at Valentino, where he bought me a dress that cost more than my car. "Marcus, this is too much," I protested as the sales associate wrapped the $3,200 dress in tissue paper. "When will I ever have occasion to wear something this expensive?" "You'll wear it to the charity galas we'll attend, the business dinners we'll host, the anniversary celebrations we'll have for the next 50 years, he replied, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "Sarah, this is our new life. I want you to get used to being treated like the queen you are." In that moment, standing in a luxury boutique in Rome with my new husband buying me designer clothes, I felt like I was living in a dream. How could I have known it was all funded by money that didn't exist? "Marcus, this trip is costing more than I make in 8 months," I said as we sat in our Mediterranean suite. He kissed my forehead. "Stop worrying about money. I'm making more than we can possibly spend. Trust me to take care of us financially while you focus on saving lives." The house hunting process in 2014 was when I should have started asking harder questions about our finances, but Marcus had a way of making me feel foolish whenever I expressed concerns about money. We looked at probably 15 different properties over 3 months, and Marcus rejected most of them for reasons that seemed increasingly unreasonable. "This kitchen is too small for the dinner parties we'll host," he'd say about a perfectly adequate kitchen. Or, "The master suite doesn't have enough closet space for your growing wardrobe," referring to the expensive clothes he kept buying me. When we finally found the Cherry Hills Village house, I fell in love immediately. It had everything I'd dreamed of: hardwood floors that gleamed in the afternoon sun, a kitchen with an island where I could prep vegetables from the garden I planned to plant, and a reading nook by the front window where I could drink coffee and watch the sunrise before my hospital shifts. But the price tag made my stomach drop. $485,000 is so much money, Marcus. That's more than 7 times my annual salary. Are you sure we can afford this? Marcus wrapped his arms around me as we stood in what would become our living room. "Sarah, baby, you're thinking like someone who grew up without money. I understand that. My parents struggled too. But I'm not your father working 2 jobs to make ends meet. I closed $2.3 million in deals just last quarter. This house isn't expensive for us. It's an investment that will appreciate while we build our family in it." He pulled out his phone and showed me his banking app, scrolling quickly through numbers that looked impressive, but moved too fast for me to actually process. "See? We have more than enough for the down payment, closing costs, and renovations. Stop worrying about money and start thinking about which bedroom will be the nursery for our first baby." The down payment conversation was where Marcus really showed his manipulation skills. When I mentioned using my grandfather's inheritance, Marcus initially protested. "Sarah, that's your family money. I don't want you to feel like you have to use your inheritance for our house. I can cover the down payment myself." But when I insisted, saying I wanted to contribute something meaningful to our life together, Marcus suddenly became emotional. "You know what? You're right. This should be our house, built with both our contributions. Your grandfather sounds like he was an amazing man, and using his gift to create our family home is the perfect way to honor his memory." Looking back, I can see exactly how Marcus manipulated that conversation. He made me feel like using my inheritance was my idea, my contribution to our partnership, when really he probably needed that money desperately to make the deal work. The mortgage application process was another red flag I missed completely. Marcus handled all the paperwork, saying his business accountant would coordinate everything to optimize our tax situation. When I asked to review the documents before signing, Marcus seemed hurt. "Sarah, don't you trust me to handle this correctly? I've bought and sold dozens of properties. This is literally what I do for a living. You take care of saving lives, I take care of our finances. That's how partnerships work." So I signed where he told me to sign, trusting that my husband had our best interests at heart. I had no idea that he was already showing signs of the financial desperation that would eventually destroy our marriage and nearly cost me my life. The early years of our marriage were genuinely happy, or at least I thought they were. Marcus seemed to adore me, constantly bringing me flowers, planning surprise date nights, and bragging to his friends about his brilliant nurse wife. He'd call me at work just to tell me he was thinking about me, and he never seemed to mind that my hospital schedule meant I sometimes had to cancel plans at the last minute. But there were small things that didn't add up, things that my gut noticed even when my brain made excuses for them. Marcus claimed to have this thriving commercial real estate business, but he never invited me to office parties or company events. When I asked about meeting his colleagues, he'd say something like, "Real estate people are boring, Sarah. Trust me, you wouldn't enjoy their conversation about property values and market trends." He also had this habit of taking phone calls in another room, even when he claimed they were routine business calls. "I don't want to disturb you with work talk," he'd say, kissing my cheek before stepping onto the patio or into his home office. But sometimes I'd hear his voice change when he thought I couldn't hear him. Less confident, more anxious, occasionally angry in a way that didn't match his stories about successful deals and happy clients. The money conversations were where Marcus's manipulation was most subtle and effective. Whenever I'd express concern about an expensive purchase or suggest we create a budget, Marcus would turn it into a conversation about my worth and his love for me. "Sarah, you grew up in a family that worried about money constantly," he'd say gently. "Your parents fought about bills, your mom clipped coupons, you worked 2 jobs to pay for nursing school. I understand why you have anxiety about spending, but we're not your parents. I make good money. And more importantly, you deserve to be spoiled after spending your days taking care of everyone else." He'd pull me close and continue, "When you worry about me buying you a $200 dress, what I hear is that you don't think you're worth it. But Sarah, you're worth everything to me. Let me show you how much I love you by giving you beautiful things. Don't let your parents' financial anxiety rob us of enjoying the success we've earned." It was impossible to argue with that logic without seeming ungrateful or neurotic. Marcus had identified my exact insecurity, growing up in a family that struggled financially, and used it to shut down any questions about our spending. He made me feel like questioning our finances meant I didn't trust his love or believe I deserved good things. The red flags escalated slowly, like a frog boiling in gradually heated water. Marcus's work trips became more frequent and lasted longer. His explanations became vaguer and more defensive. His phone habits became more secretive, and he started password protecting devices that had never been locked before. In 2019, I started noticing changes in his personality that were harder to ignore. Marcus became more critical of me in small ways, commenting on my weight when I gained 5 pounds over the holidays, suggesting I needed to dress more professionally for hospital functions, making jokes about my boring nurse friends when I wanted to hang out with colleagues. "I'm not trying to be mean," he'd say when I called him out on these comments. "I just want you to be the best version of yourself. You're so beautiful and intelligent, Sarah. I want other people to see what I see instead of just seeing another tired hospital worker." The criticism was always wrapped in compliments, making it impossible to address without seeming oversensitive. But it chipped away at my confidence in ways I didn't fully recognize at the time. Marcus also started questioning my work schedule more frequently. "Do you really need to pick up that extra shift?" he'd ask when I volunteered for overtime. "We don't need the money, and I miss spending time with my wife. Sometimes I feel like you care more about your patients than about our marriage." When I explained that sick children needed experienced nurses and that I felt obligated to help when the unit was understaffed, Marcus would sigh dramatically. "Your dedication is admirable, Sarah, but you can't save every child in Colorado. At some point, you need to prioritize your own life and your own family." It was subtle manipulation designed to isolate me from work colleagues and make me financially dependent on him. If I worked less, I'd have less money of my own and fewer people to talk to about problems at home. Marcus was systematically cutting off my support systems while making it seem like he was just a loving husband who wanted more time with his wife. "I just represented a $22 million warehouse complex," he'd tell me over dinner. "My commission alone was $440,000. We're going to be wealthy beyond anything you've imagined." We organized our finances logically. I handled household expenses from my $67,000 nursing salary, while Marcus handled investments from his supposedly larger but unpredictable commissions. The red flag started in late 2016. Marcus began working later frequently, took solo weekend business trips, became attached to his phone, and grew vague about his work. When I'd ask for details, he'd say commercial real estate was too complicated for me to understand. The first major crack came in February 2023 during tax season. Marcus's business documents showed only $34,000 in net income for 2022, yet he'd spent far more than that on cars, trips, and luxury items. "How is this possible?" I asked. "Your tax return shows $34,000, but you've spent way more than that just on your car payments." Marcus had explanations ready about business expenses, depreciation, and complex tax strategies. It sounded plausible, and I felt foolish for questioning his expertise. But I started paying closer attention. In April 2023, our mortgage payment bounced for the first time in 9 years. I discovered Marcus had withdrawn nearly $12,000 in cash from our joint account without telling me. When I confronted him, he explained it was for client entertainment, taking high net worth investors to exclusive restaurants and golf clubs. "I've got 3 major deals closing soon worth $180,000 in commissions," he assured me. "Just trust me a little longer." In May, while doing laundry, I found a receipt that shattered my world. Dinner for 2 at Guard and Grace, Denver's most expensive steakhouse, $387 including wine and dessert. The date was a Tuesday when Marcus claimed he was working late on contracts. That night, while Marcus was in the shower, I did something I'd never done in 11 years of marriage. I looked through his phone. What I found destroyed everything I thought I knew about my husband. Dozens of text messages with someone named Tiff, going back months, flirty messages, plans to meet, heart emojis, intimate exchanges, and conversations about their future together. The most recent messages made me physically sick. "Marcus, can't wait to see you tonight, gorgeous. Wear that red dress I bought you." Tiff, "You're so generous, baby." Marcus, "Sarah's pulling another double shift, so we have all night." Tiff, "Perfect. I love you so much." Marcus, "Love you too. Soon we won't have to sneak around anymore." Tiff, "Really? You think she'll agree to the divorce?" Marcus, "One way or another, this situation is going to resolve itself. I have plans." That last exchange, "I have plans," sent chills down my spine. This wasn't just an affair. Marcus was actively planning to end our marriage, and the way he phrased it suggested he wasn't planning to ask for my cooperation. Here's what Marcus didn't understand about me. Pediatric intensive care nurses don't panic in crisis situations. When a child's life is in danger, we assess systematically, prioritize interventions, and execute with precision. Those same instincts kicked in. Instead of confronting Marcus, I started documenting everything. I opened a safety deposit box and began collecting evidence: the restaurant receipt, bank statements showing his withdrawals, tax returns, photographs of expensive items he'd purchased. I also opened a private bank account and started diverting part of my paycheck there, building a financial safety net. I researched Colorado divorce law and learned that since I'd paid the house down payment from my inheritance, I had strong legal grounds to claim it as separate property. Over the next weeks, I continued building my evidence file while pretending everything was normal. Marcus got sloppier about hiding his affair, staying out later, being careless with his phone, making ridiculous excuses. In June, I found hotel receipts in his car. The Ritz-Carlton downtown, always charged to our joint credit card. I photographed everything and added it to my evidence file. I hired private investigator David Chen, a former Denver police detective specializing in matrimonial cases. Within 3 weeks, David had comprehensive photographic evidence of Marcus's affair with Tiffany Morrison, a 24-year-old restaurant hostess. But David uncovered something far worse than adultery. "Your husband's business is essentially fraudulent," David told me. "Rocky Mountain Property Solutions exists only on paper. He hasn't closed a legitimate deal in over 2 years. He's running a Ponzi scheme, taking money from investors for fake real estate projects." David showed me evidence that Marcus owed at least $340,000 to various victims: retirees who'd given him their life savings, small business owners who'd borrowed against their companies to invest with him. "He's in serious legal trouble," David warned. "When this collapses, he could face federal charges. You need to protect yourself immediately." I consulted with divorce attorney Patricia Reeves and began preparing comprehensive legal action. We had overwhelming evidence of adultery, financial fraud, and theft. I also installed security cameras throughout our house, telling Marcus they were for protection. What he didn't know was that I could monitor everything remotely. My plan was to confront Marcus in November with an ultimatum: confess everything and agree to a settlement or face divorce and criminal charges. I never got that chance. On October 23rd, I woke up with severe abdominal pain. By evening, I could barely stand and drove myself to the emergency room. My appendix had ruptured, and I was developing sepsis, a life-threatening condition. At 11:47 p.m., as they wheeled me into surgery, I texted Marcus: "Emergency surgery, ruptured appendix with sepsis, at Presbyterian Hospital. Please come immediately." He never responded, never called, never came. The surgery lasted 6 hours instead of 2. The infection had spread extensively, my organs began shutting down, and I developed cardiac complications. I was placed on life support, ventilator, dialysis, multiple IV medications. For 2 weeks, I was unconscious, fighting for my life. While I was dying, Marcus saw his opportunity. He moved Tiffany into our house, telling her I'd left him. He threw away my belongings, redecorated our bedroom, and erased every trace of my existence. But Marcus's greed led him to commit multiple felonies. Convinced I would die, he contacted my life insurance company claiming I had died during surgery. He received a $47,000 advance for funeral expenses, which he spent on a car for Tiffany and vacation packages to Costa Rica. Most devastating, he found an investor to buy our house for $340,000, $150,000 below market value, and forged my signature to complete the sale. Since both names were on the deed, he needed my consent, so he simply created fake documents. Marcus didn't know about my safety deposit box, private accounts, evidence files, or security cameras recording everything he and Tiffany were doing. On November 7th, I regained consciousness. I was weak and disoriented, but alive. The first thing I saw was that text from Marcus: "House sold. Moving on. Don't contact me." My colleague Jennifer was beside my bed. "He never came, Sarah, not once. He told staff you were separated and refused to make medical decisions. Your sister had to get a court order for legal authority." I called Patricia immediately. "I'm alive and I need you to file everything, today." Patricia arrived within 2 hours with briefcases full of legal documents. "He sold the house illegally by forging your signature, felony fraud. He also committed insurance fraud by falsely claiming your death." That afternoon, Patricia filed divorce proceedings, criminal fraud charges, federal insurance fraud charges, emergency orders to freeze Marcus's assets, and eviction orders to remove both Marcus and Tiffany from my property. She also contacted the FBI with evidence of Marcus's Ponzi scheme. By 4 p.m., my house was surrounded by law enforcement. Marcus arrived home at 6:30 p.m. to find police cars, FBI vehicles, and Tiffany crying on the lawn with her belongings. When Detective Torres arrested him, Marcus completely incriminated himself. "My wife is dead," he shouted. "I inherited everything." "Your wife is very much alive and pressing charges," Torres replied. "She was supposed to die?" Marcus yelled, apparently forgetting he was surrounded by law enforcement. "The doctors said she probably wouldn't make it. I had investors threatening me. I needed that insurance money." Marcus was arrested on the spot, with his own words providing prosecutors with evidence of premeditated fraud. The investigation revealed Marcus had been running his Ponzi scheme for 3 years, defrauding 23 victims out of over $580,000. Many were elderly retirees who'd trusted him with their life savings. Federal prosecutors charged Marcus with wire fraud, mail fraud, insurance fraud, identity theft, money laundering, and racketeering. They offered a plea deal, 18 years in prison, full restitution to all victims, and forfeiture of all assets. Marcus's attorney advised him to take it. He did. During sentencing, victims testified about how Marcus's fraud had destroyed their retirement plans. Mrs. Eleanor Patterson, 81, said through tears, "I trusted him because he seemed like such a nice young man. Now I'm working at a grocery store just to pay for medications." The judge sentenced Marcus to the full 18 years and ordered $1.2 million in restitution, $580,000 to investors, plus $620,000 in damages to me for emotional distress and financial harm. Every asset Marcus owned was liquidated. The BMW was repossessed, his expensive belongings sold at auction, even his Rolex seized to compensate victims. But the most satisfying part wasn't the money or seeing him imprisoned. It was knowing I had survived everything he threw at me. Marcus had calculated his entire scheme around my death, planning to use my insurance money to pay off investors before fleeing with Tiffany. He'd underestimated the woman who'd spent years saving children's lives in emergency situations. Even while unconscious, my preparations protected me. The evidence I'd collected, the security cameras, the legal groundwork, everything came together to destroy his plans. The house sale was voided. I recovered full ownership plus damages. The insurance fraud was reversed, and I got the full policy value as compensation. Today, I'm 39, completely recovered, and living peacefully in my house. I've redecorated exactly how I want, filled it with plants and books reflecting my personality, rather than compromising with someone else's preferences. I returned to work 8 months later, and colleagues treated me like a hero, not just for surviving sepsis, but for protecting myself from someone who tried to profit from my death. 6 months ago, Marcus sent a 12-page letter from prison wanting to apologize and explain his actions. I read 2 pages and threw it in my fireplace. Some say I should forgive him, but I'm not angry anymore. Anger requires energy I'd rather spend building my new life. Marcus made calculated choices to betray our marriage, steal from innocent investors, and try to profit from my hoped-for death. The consequences aren't my revenge. They're justice, working as it should. He gambled everything on me not surviving surgery. He lost catastrophically. Sometimes the best revenge is simply surviving and thriving, while the person who tried to destroy you faces natural consequences of their greed and betrayal. Marcus thought my medical emergency was his golden opportunity. It became his complete downfall. Today he's serving year 3 of 18 years in federal prison while I'm living my best life, surrounded by people who actually care about me, doing work that saves children's lives, and sleeping peacefully, knowing justice was served. The next time someone tries to count you out while you're down, remember my story. Sometimes the best revenge is refusing to stay down and making sure the truth comes to light. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe if you enjoyed this story. Have you ever had someone underestimate your strength? Drop a comment. I'd love to hear your stories. Remember, you're stronger than you think, and karma has a perfect memory.